Welcome everyone to the 12th episode of the second season of Loops. This time we are again with a special episode because we are part of the Green Week event as an official partner event. Loops is a web series of webinars that support the cross-linking of information between two projects, two Horizon 2020 funded projects. This time we are with SUSFERT and BIOSCHAMP, and today we are going to speak about the European soil strategy. Now, war and pandemic are not the only challenges for our food supply chains. The climate change is by far the most stressing issue. Now, climate change will not only endanger the shape of our agricultural chains, but it will also generate political and several societal challenges in the future. In history, for example, 2015 is referred as the year with the refugee crisis, but the next time it will happen due to climate change. Then when this will happen, it is possible that it will have dramatic and chaotic consequences. Countries located in the south of this hemisphere will not only struggle on the political side, they are located in an area where climate change will be the hardest. The impact of climate change will be the hardest. This has a potential to drive forward politics of aid, but also while radically changing the civilization as we know it. People will try to get away from what will be their inhabitable home by then. We can do something, of course, for that. And combating desertification, restoring carbon-rich ecosystem, fixing greenhouse gas through land management, protecting groundwater, reducing nutrients loss, and the use of chemical pesticides is all part of a EU soil strategy. Achieving that could indeed prevent the wars and bring together the world. Therefore, tackling climate change and making the agricultural sector more resilient is now more important than ever. To address this topic, again, we are partnering with two outstanding Horizon 2020 projects today, BIOSCHAMP and SUSFERT. BIOSCHAMP today is represented by Jamie Carrasco, lead researcher and innovation manager at CTACH, the Mushroom Technological Research Center of La Rioja in Spain, and then we have also Inigo Rodilla, which is the senior project manager of Innovario. On the other side, SUSFERT today is represented by Günter Brader, which is the scientific coordinator for the Austrian Institute of Technology in Austria, and which for the Center of Health and Bioresources. Hi, everyone. Could you introduce yourself, maybe starting by Mr. Brader, and present very quickly your project list?
Yeah, hello. So my name is Günter Brader. I'm the scientific coordinator of SUSFERT, and we are working in a BBI project. And maybe you can show me the first slide here. Yeah, okay. So SUSFERT is, as the name implies, sustainable fertilizers, and we are working on fertilizer solutions. As you all might know, the major nutrients for plant growth is phosphate, nitrogen, and potassium. And one of our major focus is here on phosphate. And phosphate is a non-renewable resource. And with the SUSFERT project, we try to improve the reusability of phosphate for agricultural soils. And we want to really introduce that into industrial applications and to make it work for European agriculture. Maybe you can show me the next slide, please. So, as I mentioned before, the dependency on non-renewable resources and the intensive fertilization is a major issue for agriculture, but it's also a very important issue for producing enough food and feed for European and worldwide consumption, of course. And plants need phosphate. It's a critical resource for plant growth. The European Union imports a large amount of their phosphate. So what are the ways how we can tackle, how we can reduce this dependency, and how we can make the phosphate use more sustainable? So we have three major aims to do that. So first, we want to introduce renewable phosphate sources into the nutrition policy and in the agricultural applications, meaning we are using struvite. Struvite is a mineral which can be regained from wastewater and industrial waste as a phosphate crystal and can be reintroduced into fertilizers. But that's only one piece. Another piece is the usage of microorganisms, probiotics, bacilli, other strains for making phosphate more available to the plant. Because one important issue is that most of the phosphate, or a large extent of the phosphate, is not available for the plant in soil. And if we can help the plants by microorganism and by usage of microorganisms to be able to catch more of the phosphate, the less phosphate entrance is needed. And last but not least, we are implying coating solutions which will retain the phosphate in the fertilizers for a longer time and release it more slowly so that the phosphate is available for the plant during the growing season more all over. So our idea in SUSFERT, maybe you can show me the next slide, please. So our idea in SUSFERT is really to decrease the dependency on mined phosphorus and mined phosphate, simply by applying a number of strategies to be able to be more sustainable here. Yeah, we are also trying to valorize waste and byproducts. So, for example, an important component in SUSFERT is the usage of lignosulfonates, which are coming from the paper and pulp industry as a side product, and can be valorized by using that as a coating, as different type of coatings, but also by introducing carbon into the soil, which is of course an important issue for climate change policy as well. What we also want to do, which I haven't mentioned yet, but which is also part of SUSFERT, is the usage of siderophores. Siderophores are bringing iron to the plant, and iron is a minor fertilizer, but nonetheless very important. And current solutions are based on chemical siderophores, which are sometimes not very easily degradable in soil. And we try to imply here bacterial, fungal based solutions with fungal produced siderophores, and thereby reducing soil contamination. So we try to really strengthen rural areas and establish local value chains, and also show that green technologies can really work in the SUSFERT project. And with that, I have already finished my short introduction into the SUSFERT project. Next slide, we can maybe show for contacts, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation indeed. Let's move then to the other project, BIOSCHAMP. I will put your presentation on. Please talk a bit about your project.
Thank you very much, Luca. We are a EU-funded project too, by 2020. I'm going to just introduce which the project is focused on, which challenges are we tackling, and who we are, because we have a comprehensive value chain from researchers to final users of the potential solutions. So BIOSCHAMP project is a EU-funded project. It's a 3.5 years long project. At this moment, we are on the month 21, so exactly in the half of the project. As you mentioned it before, is led by BIOSCHAMP which is the association of mushroom producers from Navarra and La Rioja, and Jaime Carrasco, the scientific coordinator of the project, belongs to CETICH, which is the Mushroom Technological Center there in La Rioja. It's a 4 million budget project, and the main aim of the project is to develop a biostimulant alternative casing for a sustainable and profitable mushroom industry. Which are the main challenges that we are tackling with this project? So first, finding ways to boost profitability and sustainability, since we are working on deliver this alternative and sustainable low-peat biostimulant casing for the mushroom industry. So for those that are not used to the mushroom cultivation industry, when we talk about this casing, we talk about a layer of substrate that helps for the fructification of the mushrooms. This layer is mainly the conventional solution. The conventional solution is mainly made of peat, which that, as you know, is considered a non-renewable resource due to its content of carbon, and it should be extracted from the peatlands. So first challenge in BIOSCHAMP project is try to formulate an alternative layer, non-based, with a lower rate on peat than the conventional solution. In the other hand, we have this challenge about fighting the diseases, since the mushroom sector is heavily affected by diseases. There are large amount of the crops. For some diseases, around the 20% of the crop could be lost because of a disease. So this industry has been very dependent on chemical products. Each year, the amount of chemical product allowed by the industry is decreasing, with evidence in addition of disease resistance. So what we are combining is first an alternative solution that includes a bio-based material that are going to substitute this peat on the layer, and then in order to reduce the amount of pesticides, we are working on the formulation of biostimulant compounds that reduce the dependence of these pesticides and increase at the same time the yield of the mushroom cultivation. So this is a short schema about when this casing soil, this fructification layer works. So first we have the compost, and then there is this application of the casing soil to induce the mushroom fructification. Here is when BIOSCHAMP solution is going to be the main player, and then for sure, once the fructification happens, we go ahead with the harvest of the mushrooms. For this, we involve 12 partners from different countries in the EU. We have now at this moment, we have been working mainly with the research institutions that we have, for example, for sure the leader, the CETIC, then CSIC, which is the main research organization here in Spain, the University of Oxford, INAGRO from Belgium, the University of Wageningen, who is the responsible of the study on the alternative substrates, and then we are going to formulate the whole solution together with industrial partners, mainly Tequila VVV from the Netherlands, and Newfos, which is also a substrate provider, both from the Netherlands. And then we are going to test this solution in an industrial environment with three different mushroom producers, one in Spain, another one in Poland, and one additional in Serbia that is especially interesting for us, since it is a mushroom cultivation. It's a mushroom producer that they work with agroecological practices, so non-conventional but ecological practices. And that's all. At this moment, we are, apart from the activity on the research and development activities, we're also working on communicate the best practices available through practice abstracts for primary producers that you could find in our website. This is the first batch. In a few months, we are going to have a second batch of practice abstracts to improve the quality of the practices in the mushroom industry. If you would like to know more about this project, just feel free to join in our website, on social media, and LinkedIn, Twitter accounts. For sure, we will be happy to hear about you. Thank you so much for this minutes, Luca.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Inigo. Both projects, thank you for both actually presentation of the projects. They're two ambitious projects, and they both deal in some part with fertilizers and pesticides. Well, I guess because they have a big impact on the soil health. Could you explain exactly what are the biggest challenges due to the application of these chemical materials that the agriculture is currently facing in maintaining soil health, please? Who wants to start?
Yeah, maybe I can start. Well, this is a very tricky question, actually, to be honest. But of course, because it's a bundle of different issues and questions raising here. I mean, on one hand, we really need to try to maintain agricultural production. I'm talking about general agricultural production now. And as I mentioned before, I mean, we need the high level of production, what we currently have, needs quite some entry of nitrogen and phosphorus. So, but this is one side. But of course, on the other side, as we all know, that the exploitation of soils and this heavy impact, what we see in the last years, is creating problems. I mean, just for example, in terms of nitrogen, their overall nitrogen entry worldwide by human is far greater than the nitrogen entry naturally. So we are and this is done by a very energy demanding process, the Haber-Bosch process, where most of the nitrogen fertilizer is produced with. So we need to find some way out of here. And of course, this heavy influx of especially nitrogen, but also phosphate into soil changes the soil environment. And it's not easily to be restored from one day to the other, or to make it more sustainable from one day of the other. So I think the biggest challenge will be to define how much we can reply, how we can change our P and potassium cycles in a more sustainable way, in a more circular economic style. What actually is even a good soil, a productive soil for us, how we can define it, how we can understand the microbiological status, for example, for a soil, to say, okay, this soil has much more capacity for plants to be able to grow properly. And I think we need a lot of, let's say it in a buzzword, a digital farming solution to understand point by point soil requirements, because of course all soils in Europe are not the same. So a solution for soil A might be much different as a solution for soil C. But it is clear that the old style, like we put NPK all over, is not going to work in a long-term sustainable way. So we need to have more local solutions, and we need to put more, intelligent solutions locally, I think.
Thanks, Günter. Maybe I can just follow. So, in the case of BIOSCHAMP, we are not straightly working with soil, but we require soil inputs for our crops. Basically, we are just growing indoors, and this casing layer that we are using is extracted from peatlands. Obviously, the industry is highly dependent on the extraction of peat. Extraction of peat means that we are degrading peatlands. Peatlands are sinks of carbon, and obviously removing this peat from peatlands has an impact and promote climate change, about global warming. In here, we have a challenge in our project, and the point is that the policies in Europe are just moving towards the forbidding the extraction of peat. Therefore, there are 2 points in here that we want to target. We want to protect peatlands from the extraction and keep these environments which are quite relevant because there is a lot of wildlife over there working. And on the other hand, obviously the industry itself says that we want to continue producing food. And for this point, we need this material to be replaced. But for the moment, obviously, we are still dependent on the peat. And so this is the kind of equilibrium that we need to look for. And our innovation approach is just to replace the extraction of peat. This is the main input that we are just targeting in BIOSCHAMP, talking about soils. But at the same point, obviously, talking about the pesticides and the input, in the while working in the indoors and for the production of mushrooms itself, we have several conditions that, for example, we are very high relative humidity in our crops, very high temperature, meaning that every single biotic disorder is promoted, because in the end we have like an incubation chamber in our crops. So it's for that regularly we need to use pesticides to cope with these biotic disorders, and also including biostimulation in the substrate of cultivation can have can make a difference, obviously, to reduce the dependence of pesticides that we are using. And the pesticides and the chemicals and the biostimulants that we are also the designing in BIOSCHAMP could have not only a use in BIOSCHAMP itself for the mushroom crops, but could also jump into the regular agriculture and obviously replace some of the chemicals that for sure have an impact in the quality of soil. So this is the main inputs that we can add with from BIOSCHAMP to keep the health of the soil.
Indeed, interesting. I would maybe on this topic of the balance between having a health but also productive soil, which is part of what the EU soil strategy requires. Specifically, they say, okay, we have to get rid of the nutrient losses by at least 50%. We have to get them, we have to maintain them. But on the other side, also getting rid of chemical pesticides by 50%. Well, for these policy goals, how are the two projects specifically contributing, or will they contribute? Or you, of course, we are now running research, but there is still 2 years for some of you. So how do you see the contribution on the short term, but also on the long term, coming from your projects?
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I can start again, Jamie. Just don't tell me if you want to talk
No,
first.
for sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. We will.
Yes, go on.
Yeah. So of course our project focuses more on the nutrient loss and on the nutrient impact than on the chemical pesticides. But yeah, as I mentioned, I mean our main goal in the project is to really reduce the phosphate entry, and we are aiming at providing more usage of P from renewable sources. Partly, this is the struvite, which is a recycled P from waste, but also we try to reduce the loss in that term, that we want to help the plant by being able to recycle more of the P in their growth cycle by the usage of microorganisms, and by introducing coatings, carbon lignosulfonate based coatings, which are more distributing the P over the plant growth. So that means, because most of the loss of P is not so much that it's a runoff into rivers or so, like in nitrogen, where it's a different issue. But in the case of P, it's more of a binding of the P to the soil particles, and that it's simply not available for the plant anymore. And by adding these additional factors to our fertilizer solutions, we are aiming at simple being able, or making the plants able to reuse more of the P which we add to the soil.
Have you already conducted some tests, and do you know what are the stage of it? Like how much are you able to reuse?
Yeah, well, we have been doing tests. Of course, we are in the third year of the project, and we are continuing till this year and next year, having an additional field trial. So from the greenhouse trials and from the semi-field trials, we can say that yes, the probiotics are helping quite substantially to provide phosphate for the plants to grow. But for the field trials, I really would like to wait for the additional 2 years to have conclusive solutions, because as you might know, plant growth trials are not very easy. So we need to compare several growth regions, and we need to compare it over several years to have conclusive solutions and conclusions. Yeah.
And we will wait with you because it's a very interesting result and test. From the side of BioSCHAMP, how are you contributing to this EU soil strategy and specifically to this 50-50 balance we want to achieve?
Okay. Jaime, would you like, or could I?
Go ahead, Iñigo, if you want.
I think we were quite optimistic when and we're sure that we could achieve that. We on the long term we are expecting not a reduction of the 50% for the C2C, but the 90% of reduction of chemical fungicides for mushroom industry due to solutions like the BioSCHAMP project. This is the main. Regarding the nutrient loss, we don't have directly an impact, but first, because of this use of the biostimulants, first we could reduce this use of chemical pesticides. But instead of reduce the nutrient loss, don't forget that these biostimulants also have not fertilizing, but they are able to increase the yield of the productions and shorten, in the case of mushroom, the cultivation cycles, which allows to increase the productivity with more respectful use of the soil. In this case, talking about soil with these cultivation cells for the mushrooms. For sure, this is the dimension regarding the chemical pesticides use. But then we also should consider, as Jaime mentioned it before, this reduce of the peatlands, which is also something the name on the new EU soil strategy about this inventory of extracted soils and this passport for soils that are required to be extracted for other uses. So by substituting the peat by other materials, bio-based materials coming from other industries, so as byproducts, we're also reducing the amount of soil required to be extracted. So Jaime, if you would like to add something that I forget, or maybe give some details, since you are the scientific expert on this work. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe you can add some additional information. So the situation is that when you are designing an alternative pesticide or a pesticide itself, some of the things that you have to take into account is that you need efficiency in your product, but also selectivity. And selectivity in our particular crops is very important because we are cropping a fungi and we are targeting here mycoparasites, so fungi that are parasites of our crop. That is a fungi itself. So the point is that we cannot just add very high doses because in the end we can damage our crop. And besides, the problem is that the range of pesticides available to cope with biotic disorders in mushroom productions is very short. And there are a lot of evidences of resistance already. And this is not just happening in the mushroom sector, but in the agriculture in general, that the resistance is occurring in soils particularly, and in the casing layer that we are using as well. There is a kind of a fungistatic equilibrium that is just provided by the microbiome, understood that all the bacteria and fungi and the other organisms that are living in this environment, this is broken by the colonization of our crop. And what our approach is that can we identify those microorganisms responsible of the fungistatic equilibrium? Can we reintroduce them into our alternative material in order just to recreate a new material that already presents some preventive properties for the germination of parasites? So this is the approach. By doing so, in the preliminary results that we have in crop, we achieve a controlled degree of fungal parasite that is comparable to the fungicides that are currently used in the mushroom sector, like the prochlorate manganese, which is an imidazole, and the metraphenone, which the mechanism of action is not described. So this is already good news that we are achieving more or less the same degree of control that with the pesticides. So yeah, there's a good chance that we can obviously replace the dependence of these pesticides.
I think it's a very complete answer. Thank you. Springing to another part, maybe, of the European soil strategy, it also asks to it also focus on reducing soil pollution by developing biodegradable polymers and coating agents of fertilizers. Do you think that in 2030, maybe 2040, we will be able to hold this same webinar and tell our audience that Europe has a toxic-free environment?
Well, if I'm allowed to start again, so yes and no. I think in terms of biodegradable solutions, I think this is possible and doable. So we are definitely able to substitute most of these materials what we are introducing into soil by degradable solutions. I think that's actually out of question. I think we shouldn't be having a seminar in 2040 anymore. I think that will be done. Yeah. But the second part, will we have a pollution-free environment, or how do you phrase it? Well, of course, this takes more time, because everything what is already in our soils or in contaminated landslides and so on, well, I guess that takes a little bit longer to be clean again, if you would call it like that.
Do you also share the same feelings as Günter, Jamie, Inigo?
Well, I mean, Inigo, I can go first if you want. You can add.
Sure, go ahead.
If you want. It's a very complicated question, obviously, but I suppose that talking about the alternative materials, that's something that we need to take into account, that this must be part of an integrated management programs for diseases. So meaning that obviously like extensive and very intensive agriculture, meaning that you don't take care about your crops, your outbreak, which is the threshold of disease where you have to add. You are just adding preventive treatments, and maybe you don't have even disease. So in the end, you are promoting sometimes the occurrence of resistance. So this approach, the substitution of pesticides by more biodegradable and sustainable products, should be hand by hand with an application of integrated management programs of diseases. Both together, I think that we will find a much better scenario by 2040. Yeah.
Inigo, you're the last one to reply.
No, I just were thinking not just on in order to looking for a toxic-free environment, that some of the activities that probably we will talk later, more related with the safety of these products, that one of the activities that we made in BIOSCHAMP project, apart of the development of this alternative casing, we have an additional kind of survey monitoring, because what EFSA detected, mushroom industry has a significant percentage of samples of polluted by pesticides mushrooms. So, but this is not just for the direct application, but because of the remaining pesticides from the straw used for made compost. So this is not just about how much we use, but how much is already circulating in the already existing soils and compost. So this is something not just about how much or how we are using the pesticides and the fertilizer, but how our soils are polluted and how we could manage these soils and these materials that are already circulating. But this is just another point. But for sure, I agree with Günter that yes and no. We will like it's something that is feasible. It is, what do we, with the current mechanism, we are closer and closer, but probably we need, as Jaime mentioned, a more comprehensive system where everybody is aligned on this to this aim.
Speaking about
sorry, if I just may add one sentence, because in my answer I was mainly referring to the biodegradable polymers, and microplastic and solutions in fertilizers. Of course, pesticides are again a different story and way more complicated, and it's so different in different applications and agricultural industries, so that I think that is not easily answerable in a few minutes.
Of course. As part of this comprehensive system that you have well-defined, is there any other area that would play a major role and would have a high impact on reaching this reduction of soil pollution that you haven't mentioned yet? Of course, we're asking for BioSCHAMP, and we can do a similar question for the polymers, because indeed it's a bit different.
Well, there is another point to consider in here, for sure. And for example, in the case of BioSCHAMP and crop production, by the end of our crop cycle, we are producing something that is called a spent mushroom compost. And this is basically made of the compost and the spent casing used by the end of the crop cycle. We cannot crop once again. We cannot cultivate once again using the same material. So the industry, what we do usually is just to recompose somehow this material, and thereafter we reintroduce this material into other agricultural activities. So, for example, as soil amendment. And obviously, if in this material there are some debris of pesticides, somehow we can reintroduce either the pesticides itself or some metabolites of degradation through the process of recomposing into the soil. So reducing the input of pesticides in our crop eventually will have a reduced impact on the remaining pesticides that are in this side product that will be eventually used as an amendment for other agricultural activities. So I would say that this is a side effect of the BioSCHAMP project, and that obviously reducing the impact of pesticides in soil could have an advantage of this one. This point, maybe Inigo, you want to add something else, but at this stage, I think this is quite relevant, because in the end, we are using this spent compost mostly for agricultural activities.
Nothing else to add from my side.
And for what regards these polymers, is there any major area we should focus on to try to get a big impact?
I think maybe what we haven't addressed yet is precision farming and precision technology and digital solutions in agriculture. So the simple overall reduction of entry by providing when needed at the place where needed can have a substantial impact, even if keeping the same technologies going. That you are able not. If you are not to spread everything with the water sprayer, as we say in German, but like precisely put the nutrients where the plants needs it, then this will already introduce a saving of materials and consequently reduction of pollution entry.
I was now thinking about this is a very interesting point for me, because of course my background is in IT, so marketing and IT. So today I had to study a bit also to be able to moderate this session. But I was thinking actually there are a lot of agriculture, because of course this is a new frontier. But when I look at the reality of how many agricultural companies are actually able to implement these systems, you see, of course, the big ones, the big companies that have a budget and can afford such an investment. to be innovative. But when you go on the small and medium enterprises, you find a lot of different barriers on that. Do you think keeping investing on research to make it more affordable and should also be a point here in that direction?
Well, I think what is, of course, an issue for small companies, especially in terms of pesticides, but also for biofertilizers and the use of probiotics and microorganisms, is that the registration hurdles are not always very small, to put this smoothly. So for a small company to introduce even a perfect solution for a certain problem will indeed afford a lot of investment, which a large company can much easier afford. So that's not necessarily a big help for small companies, to put this now smoothly. And it's understandable, not? You don't want to have a bacteria put into mushroom production, for example, or into salad production where there's a potential harm for humans or animals. Of course, there must be some registration and some legislation and some toxicology studies behind that. But we all know that it is probably beyond that, and that bringing such a product on the market is difficult, especially if it comes to probiotics and microorganism solutions.
All right. Maybe we can go to the next question I've prepared. Speaking about the alternatives that we are developing, what is the role the microorganisms and biostimulants play in reducing soil pollution? That's a question. That's a point we haven't touched too much yet.
Should I go first?
Sure.
Günter, if you want.
Yeah, please.
All right. Obviously the point that Günter already highlighted, one of the problems in here, that there is a different legislation talking about biostimulants and biocontrol agents. And the point is that when working with microorganisms, there are, depending on how toxic are they consider for human beings and animals and the environment, they have different classifications. But even when you are working with an organism that has a very low level of toxicity, it's considered innocuous, even though you have to go for the same procedures and the same path to go for legislation. So this is one of the shortcuts for designing biostimulants and biocontrol agents. But the advantage of designing, I think, from my point of view, if you want to design a biostimulant, must be something that is already well adapted to the environmental niche where you want to reintroduce this particular biostimulant. So this is one of the first steps. You cannot reintroduce a biostimulant in an environment that is very aggressive for the multiplication and just to produce, for example, the secondary metabolites that are produced in this environment for the purpose. In the case of nutrients motility, so for example, those micronutrients that have ability to solubilize phosphorus, for instance, or potassium, they have to have adaptation to this soil, and this is one of the parts that make it difficult sometimes. And obviously, when you are just targeting biostimulants, sometimes you want to design something called synthetic communities. So, for instance, you want to target different issues in here. On the one hand, you want to solubilize phosphorus, for instance, and on the other hand, you, for example, want to try to control the germination of some harmful spores. So the question will be, whether or not I should design a biostimulant that is a single organism or a biostimulant that is just like a synthetic community formed by 2 different or 3 different organisms that in equilibrium can just provide different answers to different questions. So yeah, those are some of the questions on the table and you need to target when designing biostimulants.
I mean, I would add here maybe, because you were already going one step further to having different biostimulant solutions for different biostimulant solutions with communities. I mean, it would be already one step to achieve communities for one solutions, because of course a community maybe is more stable or can help each other in a symbiotic way for PFOS solubilizing, but for any trait you wish for. But I think this is again an important issue for local or precise solutions, because different soils might require different microorganisms or different formulations of microorganisms. So to be able to really have a good solution with biostimulants and microbial solutions, communities would be definitely way forward and very interesting to design such communities to be more stable in different soils, in different environments, with the problem that the registration purpose of these communities might be much more complex than for a single organism.
Yeah, I agree.
There are so many topics, and we're in the last 13 minutes. One thing I would like to address with you, basically, is the fact that now we were speaking about the usual strategy, but we don't have to forget that there are also climate change-related issues. And, for example, we mentioned technologies, we mentioned a lot of research, and all of these things also are going to are systems and processes that requires energy for their and therefore emission of CO2. Now, from the other side, the soil has this big role in absorbing CO2. It can store and reduce, therefore, the CO2 in the air, and it can also reduce CO2 emissions through more use of bio-based degradable products. What work, coming back on the real focus of your projects, are you doing in that direction? Is there anything with is CO2 emission, the impact on CO2 emission of your project measured, and what are the activities you are doing to tackle climate change from that side?
Sure. So if I can start in this point, BIOSCHAMP project has different impacts on the reducing or storing CO2 emissions. So first, because of the substitution of the peat as material, we preserve this landscape, which are the peatlands. In fact, yesterday was the World Day for peatlands. We reduce, instead of reducing, we keep stored this carbon, which is already stored in the peatlands. We left it there. We keep the ecosystems, this carbon reservoir. This is the main substitution. Then for sure, because of the substitution of a value chain that requires some logistics, because peatlands are located in some areas and are controlled by some by some owners, we could substitute this that requires a logistic chain, which is longer than more local chains. When we are working with bio-based, where the availability of the raw materials is wider, first we could reduce also the CO2 emissions because of the requirements for the transfer of these materials is shorter. This about the direct impact is we reduce the amount of CO2 emitted because since we could reduce the direct transportation issues related with the provision of the materials.
very clear. And from SUSFERT side, what is the relation with CO2 emissions?
Yeah, well, there are several aspects actually, but to start maybe from the other side this time, I mentioned that fertilizer production is quite an energy demanding process, and both nitrogen and phosphorus are requiring a lot of energy already before they're applied on the field. So a reduction or overall reduction in phosphate use consequently also reducing the CO2 entry. That's one aspect of SUSFERT. And the second aspect of SUSFERT is that by introducing lignin-based solutions we are able to store at least some of the carbon as lignin, as a natural product, into the soil for a couple of years, and they are binding a little bit of carbon. But our main focus, or our main mission, is the overall reduction of fertilizer entry, and thereby reducing energy demand and, of course, CO2 production behind that.
Jamie, is there anything else you want to add on the relationship between what you have spoken till now and how it can be linked to solving climate change?
Well, I suppose that Inge was very clear in this aspect that basically our alternative materials want to be produced locally, and obviously producing locally means that you are reducing this carbon footprint of transportation. Currently, most of the peat materials that we are using are coming from far away from the Central Europe, and they have to arrive till Spain, for instance. And besides the peat, what we are just looking for is an alternative material that have high water holding capacity, and we need to transport this at the saturation level of the peat. So in the end, we are transporting from very long distances water, 80% water. And that's not very sustainable, and that can be one of the advantages that we can just add into the table to prevent this carbon release.
I just wanted to add two key points for my previous observation. First, because of using also not just local but byproducts for other industries or agri waste that usually are valorizing with other value chains, for example, the burning for heating or energy production, we are also reducing the amount of CO2 emitted because of the conventional valorization way, or not valorization. Maybe this is something that go to landfills, which also has an environmental impact in terms of CO2. This was my first observation, that we also could reduce the CO2 emissions because of the allowance to other industries to manage in a better way the residues. And then, as Jaime already mentioned, probably in this context, this is not just a CO2, but in order to promote how the policies are fostering a more resilient and less dependent European Union. Most of this peat is bring for countries as Russia, Ukraine, which in the current context it doesn't allow to be we are very dependent on this at this moment. So it is not just to conserve these peatlands, but also to have a more resilient value chains for the European Union. Excuse me.
If I may add that, because of course the local value chains are of real importance here in reducing the CO2 balance, and that's another aim of SUSFERT to be reducing the impact of imported phosphorus, which is not coming from Russia so much, but still there is a dependency for the European Union in import, which probably is not healthy on the long run.
I mean, I think this need for local value chains and local independent value chains also brings us to My last question, which is related to circular bio-based economy, which is now the last buzzword, which is what we hear everywhere, with some good reasons behind it. My question is, it is also always it is often mentioned in Horizon projects like ours. These concepts are always mentioned in research related topics, but do you see any key products that will have an impact coming soon to the market? So with ITRL and something that we say, okay, in 2, maybe 3 years, we will all be able to use this product, and that will already start making a difference.
Yes. So if I may start again.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
Sure.
So I think both in our iron chain and in the phosphate chain, I see that really in a couple of years we would be able to introduce products which well, we are not inventing the wheel completely new, but we are able to add a iron siderophore produced from fungi. We have already a fermentation running, which can be introduced in liquid fertilizers for iron in the very near future. I would see. I don't want to talk for the industry, Rouillet and who is producing this, and Timag Agro, who are producing this product. So it's, of course, there are a couple of hurdles economically and production wise and so on, which I don't want to go into detail now, but I see that could be doable. And the same for this compound P product containing not only classical phosphate from mined phosphate, but reduced by half or by at least 40%, but containing also struvite and microorganisms. So I can see that product coming in the near future. Let's hope it will arise.
Indeed, your answer brings some hopes to me as well. From the side of BIOSCHAMP, what are your remarks on that?
Well, should I go first, or do you want to go first, Inigo?
You could start, Jaime.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. So BIOSCHAMP is an innovation action. Obviously, we are right until the level of validation of a commercial stage. So certainly, this is not the only project looking for alternative materials. So this is a hot topic for the industry, and we are very glad that the European Commission considered that our project needed funding, because it's a very good topic. So the point is that there are already two patents of investigation in this project. One for biostimulants, one for alternative materials. So yeah, and I can see that there is a product coming. We are now understanding which is the agronomical features of these materials. We are also understanding which is the role of some of the biostimulants that are already patented, and this is the kind of information that obviously there's an industry involved as well in here, and we cannot just go into details. But yeah, I think that the results that we are achieving in crop are quite promising, and I see that as far as the industry is really interested in just moving forward, and also the European Commission with the policies, try just. I mean, if the solution that it's currently used is cheaper than our alternative, is going to be very challenging. But obviously, if we consider that the solutions currently acting today have an environmental impact, that maybe we should consider that they shouldn't be that cheap. So this is one of the things that we need just to yeah, I think that there will be a product available, but the situation will be, it will be this profitable in the short term or not. and that's some of the questions. I think that it should be, because we need just to move forward.
Right now, is there? Do you have an idea of what is the acceptance from the market on these BioSCHAMP products that will get the patent?
There is no alternative commercially available for peat materials. Peat is used in the whole Europe, basically, and those alternatives are not either that easy to manage, so the management in crop is a little bit more difficult, or maybe the reliability of the materials is not just the same like the one you can find in the peat, because there is some suppliers and there is an industry supporting that the material is homogeneous and they are always producing the same material. But no, the situation is that the answer to that is not, there's not a real commercial alternative to peat-based material, and there is a gap for it, for sure, and there is a need in the industry for that.
And from the point of view of the policy work, the policy stakeholders, are you facing any barrier in what will be then the commercialization, but also the finalization of your project? And maybe we'll do also the same questions to Günter, but just to finalize the topic here, is there any policy barrier? And if so, is there anything that we could maybe say today, like, okay, good job with the EU soil strategy, but this is also needed?
Maybe Inigo, I mean, if you want to go.
I just want to add for your previous observation, just to complement, and now more linked with the question. We depend for sure there should be an acceptance by the market, but also these policies and regulations will affect, since if the EU policies advance to a more restrictive policies for the pesticides use and other chemical fungicides use, this will promote the use of alternatives as the BioSCHAMP one. At this moment, from our side, it's difficult because at this moment we just have involved on the development of the components of this solution, but we already have some conversations, for example, with EU policymakers for the war from, if I'm not wrong, from pesticides, because we attended to an event, and between the attendees, I hope if some attendee to this event is a EU policy, we will be very happy to discuss with her. Sejun is one of the last events we attended. There was one, and then we have a very interesting conversation about this, the registration of the product, how it should be considered. So it is not a fertilizer, it is not a pesticide. It's a biostimulant product that for sure at this moment there is some descriptions. There are some regulations that regulates this allowed list of products. But I think this is something that should be described on the forthcoming years. We have at this moment around 2 more years until the end of the project. So there is enough time to show how the EU policies, even more now when we have the Farm to Fork strategy, we have the EU Green Deal, we have the recently EU soil strategy in view. I think it was at the end of May, I'm not sure if it is already published, a progress document about the EU bioeconomy strategy is going to be published. So this is going very fast, a lot of new policies and new strategies that are in line with what BioSCHAMP solution promotes. We expect that the forthcoming regulations and policies will be favorable will be positive for the market launch. And since the BioSCHAMP is not a research and innovation action, but an innovation action, it is expected by the European Commission that after all of our developments to be in a product, not probably completely ready to be marketable, but at least it's going to be tested on a real environment, on a real scale. So once we conclude with the project, we will be very, very close, like TRL 8, so very close to the market product. Excuse me.
Günter, is there anything else you want to add on the topic?
The same applies for us, and I think with the Farm to Fork and Green Deal strategy, a lot of things are moving, and actually the last couple of weeks and months have changed a lot in terms of fertilizer pricing, and of course, probably also fertilizer acceptability for alternative solutions. I mean, this is now coming from all sides. Both the EU can push novel strategies, but also if the conventional fertilizers are getting very, very high in prices, of course, alternatives will have it easier to be launched on the market. As I already mentioned, I mean, of course, one of the major hurdles are the biostimulants in terms of microbial solutions. So that is still quite challenging and also quite different in some European countries, what is acceptable and what not. But I'm sure there will be a new fertilizer regulation coming out in the next couple of months. So there will be solutions for that, and it must work, and it will work.
On this topic, we have a very straightforward question from the audience. There is this lady commenting, do you think bio-based products should be subsidized? Very straightforward.
Maybe I wouldn't subsidize. I don't think that's a great idea. But maybe the other way around. I mean, maybe we have a CO2 and CO2 policy where CO2 is priced, or in some European countries, CO2 is starting to be priced. And maybe soil use or soil degradation can be priced as well. So environment pollution can be priced more. I think that would be a more sustainable policy to pricing negative impacts and not so much to subsidized positive solutions.
Yeah, at least, I mean, the point is that you try to substitute something that is more toxic for the environment with a bio-based product, but at least this should be as expensive as the toxic ones, because there is a cost of using it. So, I mean, if you want to promote the industry, we were talking about how the industry can come to the researchers and actually put these products, alternative bio-based products, in the market. Well, I mean, you have to talk about the margins of the business. And obviously, if you still have more margins in the current, more toxic products, and yeah, probably Günter has the key answer for that. I think that they shouldn't be subsidized, but maybe you need to invest in the development of the products, because the industry must be convinced. And if you are reluctant to the industrial step forward for the production of these bio-based products, maybe you will have to wait for longer. So I think it's a good investment in the first steps of research and development. I think it's more accurate.
Inigo, anything to add to this?
Completely agree. The acceptance of these bio-based products should be based on the acceptance of the market, not because of being subsidized, but by answering the challenges and the requirements for the industry. I agree with Jaime that probably what could be subsidized, like these EU funding programs, is the development of these materials. But in the end, the real acceptance and the real impact is going to come from the real acceptance of the market and the industry of these byproducts, even for sure, as Jaime mentioned, when it's not a harmful product. So just focusing on the main goals that everybody in the EU should be looking for.
Yeah. So from my side, I asked you all what I wanted to know. But do you have any other question for each other? Maybe points that I didn't touch and you're curious about your match project?
Yeah, maybe I have a question for Günter.
Yeah, please.
So yeah, we're talking about the lignosulfonates. Yeah, it happens that I was working once with lignosulfonates to complex iron and to cope with iron chlorosis in soils. So I was wondering, yeah, obviously with complexing agents, you want to replace, I guess, chelates that are more toxic, for instance, for the soil. But I was wondering which is the efficiency of the lignosulfonates that you are working with in terms of complexation of your
Yeah.
chemicals.
Maybe
I wonder if this is a disadvantage. But,
no, maybe that was a misunderstanding, and I didn't mention the iron too much in detail. But for the iron complexity or for the iron complexing, we have a siderophore, which is produced by a fungus. So it's not lignosulfonate. So it has a very high affinity to iron, and but the plants are able to take it out from this complex, and it supplies in a classic liquid fertilizer. It can be supplied. So it's not the lignosulfonate. So it's not it's a very specific iron binding actually.
yeah, but the lignosulfonate itself are used as complexing agents, or what is the purpose of that?
No, the lignosulfonate is the purpose of the lignosulfonate is more in as a coating agent or as an impregnating agent for phosphate or for NPK fertilizers. So there is some kind of general chelating capacity which changes the kinetics of release of the major nutrients in the soil, and by there we're having instead of a flush, we're having a more gradual release of the nutrients into the soil and for plant availability.
Yeah,
So
okay, thank you so much for that.
Actually, if I may, I also have a question. I almost interrupted you at the very first, but then I thought, no, I wait till the end. I was just for curiosity. I was wondering what is the major problems in mushroom production in terms of pests, or do you have fungi, or is this Pseudomonas, or what is the major issues, or is it a couple of different ones where you need different strategies, or do you have a one-for-all solution for all the different problems?
Yeah, well, we have different problems in the mushroom cultivation, different biotic disorders. There are bacterial diseases, Pseudomonas. There are some toxic Pseudomonas, gingery, tolasi, they're producing toxic compounds and creating spots on the mushrooms. And there are different diseases like the brown blotch or yellow blotch. Also, we have mycoparasites, which are fungi. Those are Ascomycota. We are producing basidiomycetes, which are different group of fungi. And there are a range of parasites. And also we have virus disorders as well in the mushrooms as well. But I would say that the most harmful at the moment are the fungal disorders, and those are the ones that we are just targeting in BIOSCHAMP, mostly fungal disorders, and our biostimulants target these fungal disorders to prevent the germination of pathogenic spores. But yeah, there is a range of them. As I already said, we are just cultivating in like an incubation chamber, high relative humidity, high temperature.
Of course, that's an issue.
Everything grows over there. so yeah, that's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
If there is no other question for each other, I will thank the audience for having been with us for more than 1 hour. It was a very interesting conversation. Thank you to all of you for being here. It has been a very interesting event, also from the side of someone who didn't know so much about these issues like me. Thank you for the DG Environment to partnering with us today and having us as part of the Ukraine Week. And stay tuned, because there will be new episodes coming soon, both before the summer and then next year with the third season of the loop format of Veltha is offering. Thank you again, everyone, and see you soon. Bye-bye.